Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're always about the positive vibes here on the show. And with me right now, I've got a very special guest. He has worked for numerous wrestling promotions over the course of his career, most notably with the WWE in the early 90s, and has been involved with a lot of different charity organizations. I'm pleased to welcome the one, the only, Sonny Blaze to the show. Welcome to Wrestling with Heart.
Well, thank you very much, Stanley. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes.
It really is.
All right. So tell me about your childhood. Where are you from?
I'm from Long Island. Simple childhood. We grew up, I had 7 sisters. I'm the only boy. So I grew up very spoiled Catholic family. When I say modest, I'm being modest. How my mother made ends meet, I'll have no idea. But she kept us fed. We all went to college. We all have a good foundation in faith. And I can't thank God. My mother was the greatest person I ever had the privilege of knowing. So God rest her soul. I wish I could meet more, but it was a tough little area on Long Island called Central Islip. But made it through, got out unscathed, went to St. John's University, and after college, I met a promoter named Mark Tendler, and that began my wrestling career.
Were you a big fan growing up?
Oh, yeah, I can't even tell you how. Here, may I show you?
Yeah.
I don't know if you recognize this belt.
Oh, that's like one of the early WWF title belts.
WWWF.
Yes. Worldwide Wrestling Federation.
Correct. I had 2 heroes growing up. One was President Kennedy, and the other was Mr. Bruno Sammartino. And I had the privilege of meeting Mr. Sammartino. President Kennedy died 2 months before I was born. But I had this belt custom made just because how much I loved it. And you know when they say don't meet your heroes?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Sammartino exceeded anything I could have imagined. It was a pleasure meeting him.
He had a really long title reign, too. I believe it was 7 years.
The first one. Altogether, it was almost 12. It was almost 8 years, the first one, and almost 4 the second one.
It was a long time, too. It's definitely one that a lot of people, fans that have watched for years, still remember. Of course, Roman Reigns just had a really long title reign of his own, 4.5 years. Another huge title run. So Sammartino, it's kind of rare though to see like that kind of thing happen though. Someone holding the belt for that long, but unbelievable. I mean, Sammartino was such a legend in the business. Really was.
And a legend in person, a legend. I mean, he was an ambassador of Pittsburgh. Originally he was from Abruzzi, Italy. But I just want to touch real quick on Roman. And I'm not taking anything away from Roman Reigns at all. I'm a big admirer of his family, of him, and all he's overcome with the leukemia and everything. He didn't wrestle nearly as often as Mr. Sammartino, Mr. Backlund. He sort of had a truncated schedule during his last title reign. And I'm pretty sure it had to do with health. But it's remarkable what he's been able to do while he's going through what he's going through. So I take nothing away from him at all, but I also want to give credit to the men who preceded him.
Wrestling has always seen just these magnificent specimens, these big, larger-than-life guys. But back in the 70s, you had so many, tough guys out there. Like, Sammartino, Backlund, Hogan, Roddy Piper. I mean,
Mr. Piper.
You had, just it was huge. It really was.
They had a lot of grit to them. Uh, and Mr. Sammartino, there was no official powerlifting records back in the late 50s. There were unofficial powerlifting records. And I believe it was, I might have this wrong, 1960, he unofficially set the world bench press record at the Mid City Gym, bench pressing 585 pounds clean.
Mm-hmm.
No shirts, no wraps, of course, no gas. And just that's the percentage of men that ever existed now, back to Adam, less than 1% have ever vertically moved almost 600 pounds off their chest. Think, put that in the company he's in.
That's
And
mind-boggling.
and and then in 1963, he becomes the Worldwide Wrestling Federation champion. And that's why when you had guys in the 70s, the men like Ken Patara saying how they looked up to Mr. Sammartino, they grew up in his shadow. Those were Mr. Sammartino would have been one of the men that Paul Anderson, Mr. Sammartino, these were all guys Mr. Patara would look up to. And Bob Backlund, of course, was freakishly strong.
Yes.
And by the way, Mr. Piper, unbelievably nice man.
Mm-hmm.
I can't speak highly enough about him.
He's just, a legend that we lost, still missed to this day, and really a pop culture icon.
Oh, yeah. The fact that Ronda Rousey, how do you pronounce her name? Jeez, it's a
Ronda
tongue twister.
Rousey.
Thank you. Wanted
Welcome.
to emulate him. And people still try to, oh man, if we could take whatever talent he had, put it in a can and hand it off to somebody else who deserves it, that would be a wonderful thing because he was amazing.
He really was.
And he was so kind to me in the locker room with help, advice, without being pushy, without reminding me what a big star he was. He never did that. And I'm going to tell you this is a fun story.
Yeah.
Normally I don't talk about the locker room, okay, but I have to in this case.
Mm-hmm.
So early 90s, Mr. Flair comes to WWF for the first time ever. Remember, he brought the big belt with him and everything. Well, his and Mr. Piper's friendship go back, to the beginning of wrestling, I guess. But they saw each other in the locker room and they gave each other a big hug and they start, kibitzing and whatnot. And they decide I don't remember who initiated it, but they're going to have a push-up contest. So side by side, they start doing push-ups and they got to like 5. And I forget which one. Well, either Mr. Flair jumped on Piper's back or Piper jumped on Mr. Flair's back, pancaked them. And then the two of them are rolling around like a couple of 5th graders, like wrestling each other. But it was like watching two kids having fun. They were laughing. It was watching two good friends come together after years of being apart. And that's one of those memories that sticks in my head. And I just enjoy looking back at that one every now and again.
There's a lot of camaraderie in the business. I mean, you're talking about guys, riding down the road to shows or just eating at a restaurant. There's the friends that you make in the industry, and it's remarkable to hear some of those stories, like the one you just shared. Still, people can, the guys and girls in the locker room still recall, the memories from back in the day.
But if you could picture, talking somebody into doing the push-up contest and then pancaking them and then just rolling around for a couple of seconds and getting up and, laughing it off like, where have you been for the past 10 years or however long it had been? But they had such a good time in those few seconds. Like, I wish I could bottle that and hand it to Mr. Flair right now and say, do you remember this, Mr. Flair? And I'm sure that would be something he'd enjoy opening every now and again, just taking a little smell and putting it back in his pocket.
Mm-hmm. Now, your story with wrestling, as far as getting into the business, getting your start, talk about the training process. What made you decide, I want to be a pro wrestler? How do I get involved?
I was always a fan. And then years earlier, when the PAL took us to wrestling at a place called the Comac Arena, which was about like a 2,500 seat arena, I had met a wrestler named Mark Tendler, and he's not a big name, but he was well liked he was well liked in the business back in the 70s. And so anyway, I meet him. He talked me into training with him, and it's in his garage. There is no wrestling ring. We're wrestling on a wrestling mat on the floor, made up ropes. When we're hitting the ropes, we're actually hitting walls. Um, and I was fortunate because Cactus had started stopping by just to work out. He had already been to Danucci's school, and he was wrestling on independent shows already. But he came there and he started helping out. So he was the one doing the training. And I was very grateful for that. And as you see, we stayed in touch all these years. But for a while, I'm going to say the first 2 or 3 months, and let's kayfabe is already out of the bottle. So, he's shooting on me a little bit, not to hurt me, but to make me extremely to respect the business. Let me see if this guy will come back. So, he's shooting on me. He's throwing belly to belly suplexes on me on on a wrestling mat on concrete. My wife would have to drive me home. My first wife, I beg your pardon, would have to drive me home because I couldn't drive. I'd be so banged up. But I would show up, 2 days later or Saturday or what have you, and slowly other independent wrestlers started showing up, and we'd work out with them, and I was getting a little taste. And then after a while, they start smartening you up a little bit. Well, there used to be a language, I don't know if they still use it, called Carney. While I was training for the first 3 months, they were speaking Carney. I thought it was a different language. I had no idea. And again, they weren't letting me be very smart. Just in case I dropped out, I wouldn't be running around telling everyone how, staged it was. And they made you earn it. And I guess somewhere after 3 months, they decided, you know what? Maybe we should teach him something before he kills somebody. So that was a good idea.
Yeah, that's a grind. It really is. When are in that industry, you have to put your body through so much punishment in order
Oh, yeah.
to kind of move up the ranks, move up the ladder. And, working with Mick Foley, training with Mick Foley during that time, he definitely seems like he taught you a lot.
He taught me, most importantly, first, he taught me how to protect myself. But what he drove home was how important it was to protect whoever you're working with. If he's giving me his body, let's just say a simple body slam, make sure I'm protecting him. I get him completely over so that he doesn't land on the top of his head. Just simple things, make sure that, if you find, as you're walking around, you find a hole in the padding of a ring, let the guy know when you lock up, hey, there's a divot over there. Don't catch your toe, you'll break your ankle. But it taught you respect for the business, that it wasn't just, uh, a couple of stuntmen on TV. You put it excellent that it's a grind on your body. And there's a big difference between pain and injury. If you leave a wrestling match and you don't hurt, you didn't try hard. If you leave a wrestling match and you're injured, something happened. So that's how Mick Foley would have put it.
And there's a lot of risks. I mean, as as Mick Foley, went through, with the match with the Undertaker, Hell in a Cell, and just if you watch that match back, you'll see, with Undertaker tossing him off the cage or the thumbtacks putting in the middle of the ring. I mean, it's a lot. It really, you go through a lot of pain, when you're in those kinds of situations.
By
But
the way, I was the Undertaker's very first match in the WWF.
oh, really?
Yes. Just to give you the background on that. So it's the TV taping the Tuesday before the Thanksgiving Survivor Series. So he's making his debut officially at the Survivor Series on Thanksgiving. But we're doing a TV taping on Tuesday that airs Saturday. So I wrestled him prior to his official debut.
Was this when he was Kane the Undertaker?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Didn't have a piece of ink on him. And that night, it was Tuesday I worked with him. Monday was here in Tampa. I live outside of Tampa, Florida. So Tampa, it was the evening, unfortunately, that the young man got his neck broken, Chuck Austin. And that evening, I went back to the hotel room and I talk about freak accidents, by the way. But so I went back to the hotel room and I had known Taker from the telephone with Cactus being over at my house watching pay-per-views. We spoke on the telephone a couple of times. So I see him at the front desk. He's not hard to miss. He's legitimately almost 7 foot tall. You have to be blind not to see him. So I just walk over. I said, "Hey, Mark," and he goes, "Yeah." I said, "Hey, I'm Sonny Cactus's friend." He goes, "Oh, how you been?" I said, "Are you here to work?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "But they don't have a room." I had 2 king-size bed in my room, so I give him one. And we're talking about, him coming into the company, and I don't know what, we're just generally talking, just general talking, really. But I don't think he had any idea where his character. I don't even know if he knew what his character was, frankly, because he didn't mention it. And then the next day, I saw on the board I was working with Undertaker, and had to figure out who that was. And I just he was with Brother Love, and it's back with the flower from the lapel. Yeah, Kane the Under. Yes, they introduced him as Kane the Undertaker.
And to see the legacy that he's, continued to leave behind 30 years later, it's amazing and astounding, you know.
It really is. When you think about the modern era of wrestling, to
Mm-hmm.
be able to maintain and his level of excellence, his level of athleticism at his size. When he threw, if you go back and you Google, not Google, go to YouTube, look up Undertaker versus Sonny Blaze, you'll see the match. I don't know that if that was the first one or a later one, but when he does the flying clothesline, he almost clears me. He has to reach back and grab me by the throat. It's not a clothesline anymore. Um, I'm 5'11", he's 6. There's legitimately 1 foot
He's
difference in our
tall. He's
height.
huge.
Oh, and when he did that walking on the top rope, from a different camera angle, you can see me saying, "Wow." I was just like, I couldn't believe this. Um, just amazing. And I enjoyed it. I then in the locker rooms, here he is. And again, Bob Smith's magazines used to, like, they would make me the number 2 contender for some, I don't know, ABC belt or this, just to keep my name in there. And every now and then I'd be like the champion somewhere. And I never even wrestled for that group.
Hmm.
And I'd walk in and there's Mark reading it, excuse me, Taker, and he'd go, "Hey, champ," and just like little ribbings. And it was kind of cool, and then to see all these years later, it, when they call him the Phenom, that's accurate. He is the Phenom.
And he also is a locker room leader too, you know.
Well, that happened much later on, but yeah, you could see where that would happen,
Mm-hmm.
because he was sane. He wasn't selfish. He never struck me. He came. He was extremely professional, but he was still young. We're talking about, I was what, 25, and these guys are a year younger than I am. So they're in their early mid 20s, and they've already been around for a few years. And but he would come. He was well prepared. He'd have his gear. He, he was just professional and never late. Always one of the first ones to arrive. He was always there before I was, and I was usually early. So I didn't. I couldn't afford to be late.
You were in WWF, WWE for several years.
Altogether,
Throughout your
4.
4 years, okay. Throughout your career, who were some of your favorite opponents to work against?
Geez. I used to love when I would get dark matches, guys like Chris Duffy, because that's where I could learn a lot. Um, so Chris Duffy's, Mario Mancini's, guys like that level. I'd be opening the show with them. And that was fun because, first of all, they were much longer matches. And again, I got to learn. But everybody I worked with, I mean, Rick Rude was so excellent. What just, and I used to not like Shawn Michaels. Forgive me for saying this. He was a bit too over the top for me in the locker room, bragging about himself, that type of thing. There was no humility in him. And then I watched years later, I watched our match, and he gave me a lot during that match, which is unusual for a heel to give a face enhancement talent. You know, if it was a face with a heel enhancement talent, they would. But the other way around, usually the heel went over so big. But he gave me quite a bit of that match. And then on top of it, everything was so perfect. His work, his time, everything is just perfect. And now I see it. Maybe I was too hard. Like maybe I was jealous of him too much. And I thought he's too arrogant, where he was exactly arrogant enough. And it was just confidence, but I took it the wrong way because I really, I mean, I cherish everything. Man, Kurt Hennig, when I wrestled him, it was right after he won the IC title. Now, they forgot to bring the Intercontinental Championship belt to TV. And without missing a beat, he goes, "Don't worry, I got it." And he grabbed one of the tag strap and walked out with it backwards. So all you see is the leather of it. And I mean, he was beating me within an inch of my life. I'm not kidding. The chops were so stiff. Everything was hard, you know? And he told me we got to be a little snug because we're getting ready for the pay-per-view. And I understand that, but I'm thinking, did I make him mad? And as soon as he put me in the perfect plex, and as soon as we landed, he goes, "Sonny, you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah." I was so glad to hear, "Sonny, you okay?" Because I'm like, okay, so I didn't make him mad. And then in the locker room, he came over and said, "Yeah, I'm sorry, but I got a little excited about it. But those chops sounded good." And I'm like, "Yeah, they sure did." And, just smiling it off. But man, I couldn't wait for that match to end. But they were all great guys. The Nasty Boys. Yeah, Big Bully Busick. I don't know if you remember who that is. He came with a derby and he smoked a cigar, popped the kids' balloons. It wasn't a long running thing. Um, but working with him was cool. Nick Busick was just an extremely powerful man, going back to powerful men. Um, it, Rick Rude, Ted DiBiase. Oh my gosh. How do you not love working with Ted DiBiase? You can learn more doing a 5-minute squash job for Ted DiBiase than you can working with all the independent guys in the world. That 10 minutes, you just learn professionalism, timing. Not have you ever seen a match where he's rushing? He takes his time.
No.
Everything he does, he gives it a chance to sell to the crowd. So everything matters, you know. Barbarian, all those, they were all great. I can't, I couldn't single one out if I tried.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you've had just a really decorated career, amazing career in the business. Wrestled for so long. When did you decide, you know, I want to retire? I've done enough. I want to concentrate on, you know, other things and move on to something else.
When I first started, I said I was giving myself until 30 because having not been in the business, you don't have a timeline. So you have to think just in terms of life. So I said, if I don't have Randy Savage money, and by that I meant money that you could retire on. And I don't know what Randy Savage's bank account was like or anything, but I just assumed he was making millions of dollars. I said, if I don't have that kind of bank account by the time I'm 30, I'm going to stop and go into something else so that I don't wind up looking for a job at 45, all broken up and starting a career when other people are already, junior vice president or something. So I gave myself until I was 30, which was 1994, and I stopped. And then I would wrestle sporadically if I was asked to. There was a young man that trained here in Florida, and he was having his debut match, and he was terrified. And if you're terrified, you can get hurt. So I agreed to work with him in his first match. And then I kind of changed up the finish because it didn't matter to me. And his mom was in the audience. So I went for a power slam, kicked my own leg out, held him on top of me, gave him the win so that he got the, and then I'm screaming at him, fucking pardon me, celebrate the win, man. And so he got to celebrate the win, and his name was John. And I just wanted to do something nice for somebody the way so many nice things were done for me. So,
Yeah, I mean, you're paying it forward to the next generation,
yeah.
and that's all we can do is, give back. And I want to switch gears and talk about some of the stuff that you've done outside of the business as far as charity work goes, because you've done so much. What can you tell me about some of the charity organizations that you've worked with or things that you've done to help out in your community?
Okay, I'd like to start with I started a wrestling company to do legitimate fundraisers for people, not where the company made any money, but where the organization got 100% of the proceeds, less what the guys, because I believe wrestlers are supposed to get paid. They can't afford to give their time. That's up to them if they want to make a private donation, but they get paid. So I started the Victory Wrestling Alliance, and I did a couple of fundraisers for a group called the Achievers of America. And by the way, if you ever want to leave an afternoon feeling really good, go and see one of their softball games. Anytime the ball hits the bat, they say that they hit a home run for you. And I saw this was crazy because I'm thinking in terms of an athlete, and so a blind young man came up to home plate and he's holding his bat out, and the pitcher had Down syndrome, and he keeps pitching the ball underhand until he finally makes contact with the bat, and the ball lands about 8 inches in front of home plate. And I'm thinking, okay, the pitcher's coming up to get the ball. He came up, took the bat away from the batter, and brought the batter to first base. And a live softball was sitting there with nobody trying to get him out. And I'm like, this is nuts. Nobody's playing the ball. And then the whole thing got explained to me. They got everyone in the outfield, so it would be impossible to really get a hit. But everybody feels like they're Willie Mays for that moment. They're not trying to win. They're making up the score as they go. It's 78-32. I hit a home run and one of the young men, the pitcher, as a matter of fact, with Down syndrome, gave me a hug, and I thought he was going to I've never been hugged that hard in my life, but it was wonderful. So I did a few shows for them. We raised some money for them. In the Newport Richie Rec and Aquatic Center, they charge for people to join the swimming pool. So I raised some money for these scholarships. That was really, really rewarding. Very nice facility, by the way. Now, personally, this is kind of weird. I'm a Roman Catholic, so I go to confession, and I'm going to break the confidence of the confessional, but I'm allowed to. Father Ted gave me, as an unusual penance, I had to make a donation to a place called Kimberly. I'm not going to tell you what I confessed, but so I went there and I met with the director because I wanted her to know that I was finishing my penance, so she could call Father Ted. I'm thinking there's all these technicalities involved. It was a matter of trust, and I found out about this wonderful thing. They help women. I didn't know that there are women who get pregnant and their husbands or boyfriends will beat them up and try to lose the baby. Well, Kimberly Home puts them in secret residences all over the place. They supply diapers, formula, car seats. If families need stuff for kids, but I think they focus on single mothers more than anything. But it doesn't have to be a single mother. And I fell in love with that after, especially I didn't know that existed with the beating women up so that the baby they'd lose the child. That's disgusting.
It's devastating.
But yeah, I think that's why Father Ted sent me there, so I'd learn this and become an active participant. And then, the way I do charity is I find out that something's needed somehow, and then I feel compelled to help. Sometimes I don't feel compelled to help. St. Jude's is very easy. That's been in my life my entire life. St. Jude's Children's Hospital. We've had that my entire life. So of course that's an easy check to write. You know, it's sad that it exists, that it has to exist, but it's an easy check to write. But I'll find out about something local. Just somebody needs something, or people need something. I have a business here in town, and there's a lot of homeless that live out back, and I don't mean any of this as patting myself on the back. I'm doing this so that your viewers and listeners can understand that everybody needs to get involved the best they can. Sometimes I put out a box of, I buy these tube socks and I put them out in a box and I write free on them because I don't want them to think they're stealing. And I've actually seen guys take 4 pairs of socks and then hand somebody else 2. So they're only taking 2 and they're giving 2 to somebody else. I've never seen any of these homeless people, and they got nothing. I've never seen them take all of it. They take what they need and leave the rest for someone else, and that's a beautiful feeling.
What is it about giving back that gives you the most joy?
It's exactly that. Giving gives me. It gives me joy. It's, for a long time, I was not a very good gift receiver. I was a wonderful gift giver. But let's say Stanley wanted to give me a gift. I'd insist, no, 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 don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Until much later, I was so old. It's only within the last few years, I realized that it makes people feel good to give too. So you accept their gift with graciousness. Just be graceful and say, thank you so much. This means the world to me. I got a picture from a fan. He drew this and sent it to me.
Oh, wow, that's nice.
Now, these are
That's really
8x10s he made, but the canvas one, my wife liked it so much, she hung it in the living room. It's the only thing wrestling in the living room, believe me. And, but it's wonderful to receive something like that. I haven't wrestled in over 30 years. Well, 30 years. And no, not quite. I guess 20, well, close to 30 years. Let me not do the math. But it's great when you receive something like that. And when you can help, and look, I remember that softball game. I remember that hug from the pitcher with Down syndrome. I remember the city of Newport Richey being so grateful that we were able to raise money for them to help out underprivileged kids with scholarships. I don't know the good that's been done at Kimberly Home other than I know it's successful. So the little bit I can help is helping somebody. It's helping somebody put a car seat. A couple has a child and they don't have a car seat. They can go there and get a car seat. Just helping out helps. I've been blessed in so many ways. I've been blessed to have a very short, but I love my little career that I had in wrestling. I really do. And I was blessed with that. But I've been blessed with so many things that I'm obligated to give some of that to other people. Does that make sense? Or am I sounding too holy roller?
No, I mean,
Okay.
you have a lot of passion.
I see a lot of times I see children who when I say children, 12-year-olds start foundations for something. And we get caught up living a lot, and being kind isn't hard. I'm going to ask everybody tomorrow to try to be a little kinder than they were today and a little bit more charitable to somebody else's opinion. It might not always be the way you see it, and just be charitable and be kind. It's not hard.
No.
Every time I want to punch somebody in the face, I just I give it a couple of seconds and that feeling goes away.
So you've been out of the business for a while now. Do you keep in touch with anybody that you worked with over the years, or keep in touch with, stay tuned to the modern product a little bit?
A little bit I stay tuned to the modern product, mainly through social media. I think the product, this might sound different than other guys who were in it back when I was, but I'm going to say that is better than ever. I just wish it was a little safer because what I'm seeing is a lot of needless risk that it doesn't pay off. I don't know why you would do three flips off a corner outside onto a table. You do that three times in a match. Why is that necessary? Shouldn't one be enough if you're going to do that at all? Um, so all I can do is hope that these guys take care of themselves. Obviously, they're fit. They're all in great shape now. Everything about it, it's just different. The way the business is now from then, it's a different product. It's a different age we're in. You know, when I was growing up, I'm going to go back to the dinosaurs again. We had the big deal was like Space Invaders and Pac-Man. And what do you guys have now? You're going through hallways with like night vision and battle optics and all of this stuff. I'm watching the guys play these video games on, and then they got the Madonna microphone going on so they can talk to a guy in Texas. I think that's great. So the product today is as good and as engaging as ever. It's just my taste in entertainment is maybe a little more sophisticated. I hate to use that word because it makes it sound like I'm insulting wrestling, and I never would do that. When I grew up, Mr. Sammartino was like my surrogate father, for gosh sakes. I hung on to those interviews. As a matter of fact, my favorite match of all time, real fast, working for Herb Abrams, UWF. I was unaware of the things about Herb. I don't care about any of that. He was always very pleasant to me, a very nice man. But I was wrestling Cowboy Bob Orton Jr. And, he's given me quite a bit. And his manager at the time was John Tolis, the Golden Greek. So I'm in there with two legends, and doing color commentary was Mr. Sammartino. Well, after the big superplex off the top rope, he pins me. He throws me out of the ring. Well, once I'm in air, he launches me. I have no control over my body, and I kick Mr. Sammartino in the head, knock his headgear off, the same stuff you're wearing now. And so, anyway, he gets up and he's helping me up. Cowboy Bob Orton goes up to the top like he's going to jump down on me. And then on TV, you see Mr. Sammartino standing over me, protecting me, helping me up. And, it was that. Between John Tolis, Cowboy Bob Orton, and Mr. Sammartino, how can that not be my favorite match? So, but the new product is great. I just wish the guys were a little bit more concerned about their own personal safety. Most recently, I had lunch with Cactus Mick Foley. I still call him Cactus. It's habit. I've been in touch with John Arezzi, who used to do the Pro Wrestling Spotlight up in New York, and he was kind enough to have me co-host for a while back then. I made a friend through a mutual friend of ours, Bob Smith. We're just Facebook friends, but he's also a brother in the Knights of Columbus, and his name is Rick Del Santo, and I love the pictures he shares with his beautiful family. He seems to be all about family. And of course, Bob Smith. And now I get to meet a new friend in you, Stanley. If you need anything, you just let me know. You got my phone number.
Absolutely.
I still go to a lot of indie shows. Amazingly enough, I like going to independent wrestling. Because I like to see how hard these guys are working. That it doesn't matter if there's 200 people. They're wrestling like they're in Madison Square Garden. And for some of them, that is going to be their Madison Square Garden moment. And that's what I always call it. I think it's called WrestleMania moment now, but for me, it was Madison Square Garden moment.
And the thing is, the indies, I feel like it's on fire right now because there's so much great talent. There's great talent everywhere, but
it's just not polished.
Well, I think, the more that, it's like, they're practicing, the more they do, the better they're going to get. And you're going to see these people, these guys and girls are going to make it big and hopefully blow up. It's going to be
Absolutely.
huge.
And I hope so. The thing is, these guys, and I'm not going to surprise any of your listeners, Monday through Friday, they're working somewhere. And sometimes they're working on the weekend too. They get off in time to drive to the show, get on their gear, and get in the ring. Well, when you're only wrestling a few times a month, you don't get polished very quickly. It's kind of like you have to do it almost daily to get really good at it. And by the way, let me throw out a thank you to Larry Winters, Tom Brandy. What was Prince Kaluuya's name? I think it was Prince Kalua. but his name was Pete. Um, these are guys I wrestled on the Indies, and they showed me so much. They were seasoned already. Uh, I forget what he wrestled as in Public Enemy, but the Cheetah Kid, Ted Petty. Um, I just wanted to say, and some of them are no longer with us. I'm sorry, but I love watching how much heart these guys can put into it. Uh, an independent match with 200 people there, and like I said, they work as hard as anyone you're going to see at WrestleMania. There's just not a $10 million in the production. They haven't invested $10,000 in their ring attire, but they are working every bit as hard, and it is just as difficult. So, I like the independents.
Yeah. And have they talked to you about maybe getting involved just like on the as a manager or some kind of, figure, personality doing something?
Well, a couple of times they tried making me a manager, and I was a manager. This was a nice night for the Century Wrestling Alliance or something like that. This is going back to the 90s. Tony Rumble was in charge of booking, and it was out of Wallingford, Connecticut. And one night I was a manager for Honky Tonk Man, um, Chris Candido. I apologize. God rest his soul. What a great guy he was.
Mm-hmm.
And the Powers of Pain. And then Bob Smith wrote an article where I brought the Powers of Pain back together to wrestle the Bushwhackers, and that was great. But then Paul Heyman in ECW wanted to give me the New York mobster gimmick, and when you have Paul Heyman, man, I was so lucky. I got every break in the business. I didn't have the talent. You have Paul Heyman trying to teach you how to speak, how to cut a promo, and you can't pull that off. There's something wrong with you. Not certainly not your teacher. But so he tried to do that. But I look over in the corner and I saw Terry Funk, and I see Taz. I knew Taz very well, but I'm seeing Terry Funk over there, and I'm just getting all kinds of butterflies because it's Terry Funk, man. It's like so that promo cut went terrible. But the guys ask me a lot of questions, and what I try to do is I'll talk to them after the match. They'll ask me before the match, hey, what should we do? All I tell them is, here's what you should do. You should go home the way you came. You came here healthy, go home healthy, no injuries, and work within yourself. If you don't know you're capable of doing something, don't push it. Don't Now is not the time to try it. And then afterwards, they'll ask me to critique them, and I don't do hard critiques. I'll tell them you did great. I loved your match. I think you could have tightened up here a little bit. You slow down. Let somebody sell your move so that it looks like you did something. Something like that. But I try not to be like lace into them. Oh, back in my day, we would have. I don't do that. It's unfair. And they're great athletes. I want to tell you what's impressive is the number of women or young ladies who are wrestling now. I mean, there'll be 3 women's matches on the show that are very compelling matches. And not because they're all dressed like vampires, which seems to be a thing, but they all seem to be dressed in I don't know what you call those stockings that are like nets.
Leggings.
No, they're like netting.
Mm.
They're not even stockings.
Hmm.
And then they got their black all over. They look like Vampira, for God's sakes. But like the goth look seems to be the look for these young ladies. But they are exceptionally good athletes. It's no longer, when I say TNA, I'm not talking about TNA with that you see on TNA. I'm talking about
TNA wrestling.
But the ampersand, the and sign. You know
Yeah.
what TNA
Yeah. Yeah.
means?
Yes. 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 Yes.
These women matches are not TNA matches. They are legitimate athletic events happening for you, and they're very compelling. So I'm glad to see that women are getting 20% of the card.
Yeah, I mean the women athletes, the male athletes, it's crazy to see how well they're all doing, and they just work so hard, and they really like have perfected their craft, and I think it's amazing to see
But
the hard work that they've put in.
and I had the privilege of working with one that I thought pretty much started the athletic. There were two, I think, that really started the athletic women type wrestling, tough wrestling. One, of course, Medusa Michelli. The other was near and dear to my heart, sensational Sherry Martel. God rest her soul. She was such a great athlete. Then she was so good on the mic. And then she was just such a doll in life. She really was so sweet. And then I'm watching the progression. And one day I'm watching this young lady, Trish Stratus.
Trish Stratus.
She goes to take a clothesline, and it's like in slow motion. She bridges back and comes back up like a, a slow motion part of the Matrix movie. And I'm like, I don't even know how she controlled her body like that. And I just thought they are such good athletes now. And then I see Jimmy Neidhart's girl. She's
Natalia.
just, yeah, Natty is. She's just wonderful. And I see Mr. Flair's daughter. She was getting better and
Charlotte.
better and better.
Yeah, Charlotte.
And now, who is the young lady? She's got red hair, Irish girl.
Becky Lynch.
Thank you. Yes, is she fantastic?
She's amazing.
I believe her husband or boyfriend is Seth Rollins.
Yes, Seth Rollins.
He's amazing. Again, my gosh, how in the world can you criticize anything about him? His timing is perfect. To my knowledge, he's never injured anybody. He might be hard on his own body, and he's great on the microphone. So today's product is great, but I'm going to encourage guys, for 10, $20, you can go and see independent wrestling. You're up in Tennessee, correct?
Yes, Nashville.
I'm certain there's a ton of independent wrestling in
Oh,
Tennessee.
there is. There's a
Yes.
lot. There are a
Same here in
lot.
Florida.
Yes.
And you know what? Take a Saturday night, take your little brother, take somebody, just go and have a great time. You're supporting these guys are not making millions of dollars. They're making a little extra money for their house. That's it. They're probably putting more money into their wrestling gear and stuff than they're getting out right now. But one day you're going to see them at a WrestleMania. I got a little secret for your listeners. There are two wrestlers I trained who, now out of my little school, who would think that these guys would come out? One of them's name was Mikey Whipwreck. I didn't, if you look at Cactus's first book, he mentions that I trained Mikey Whipwreck. I didn't charge John any money because I didn't think he'd make any money back. He weighed like 175 pounds, for gosh sakes. This guy's not going to make anything. And the other person that I trained was a guy named Mark LaMonaco. Are you familiar with that name?
Yes.
Would you mind telling the people who that is?
Bubba Ray Dudley.
Bubba Ray, Bully Ray. Now, he and I have had some kind of falling out that I'm unaware of, but I think I have a good idea why. And he will tell you that I'm the worst person ever to draw a breath of human life. And he's allowed to have that opinion. Again, be charitable to other people's opinion. I'm happy for him. I can't take any credit for what he did. I just trained him. I didn't develop the character. I didn't develop Mark. He developed him. But so there was a time where you could have seen Bully Ray wrestle for $15. Now you'd have to spend how much to go to a WrestleMania?
Goodness. The prices are just keep going up every year.
So there's somebody out there who is a Devon Dudley. I didn't train Johnny Rodz trained Devon. By the way, Johnny Rodz was the premier trainer back then. But you could have seen Mick Foley for $10 at a Comsquag High School gymnasium wrestling Chris Adams. But there was only 100 people shows up, and Then people are paying big money to see him wrestle at the Madison Square Garden. So go out to see who the next. As a matter of fact, you guys go out and you guys get to make who the next superstar is. Because if you stand behind them, if you get behind them, believe me, the WWF is not leaving any stones unturned. If there's talent, they find them. It's kind of like if you could play guitar like Eddie Van Halen, they'd find you if you were standing in a cornfield in the middle of Iowa. They'll find you.
And there's that news about the new ID program that they've got going on with the schools. Did you hear about that?
No, what's that?
So apparently, WWE's has like schools like that are affiliated with this program to like scout talent. And through, I guess, like certain schools, Booker T schools, one of them, Rikishi schools, one of them, Seth Rollins schools, one of them. Like all these, these schools are involved with the program to make, get the talent like on a pathway to possibly, sign with the company.
And every name you just mentioned makes perfect sense. Rikishi's entire family has been in pro wrestling going back to Chief Peter Maivia, and perhaps before, but that's as far back as I know. High Chief Peter Maivia was Rocky Dwayne Johnson's grandfather. And then, of course, Booker T. Come on, how can you lose being trained by him? And Seth Rollins, or what do they call him? Seth Effin Rollins or Seth
Freaking
Rollins?
Rollins.
That's it. Yeah, you can't do better. So you're in good hands. But yeah, they're going to scout everything. I guarantee you, if there's a wrestling show, they might not be at every single one, but if there's enough buzz about somebody, they're sending somebody in, buying a ticket, watching him or her.
Yes.
And they're going to bring them into some sort of training camp where they can polish them up really well, get them ready for whatever the next step and the next step and the next step is.
Yep.
So go out there and support some independent wrestling and have a good time.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, this has been wonderful getting the chance to speak with you. I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. It means a lot to me, to my listeners and viewers that are watching this on YouTube. Where can people find more about you on social media if they want to get in touch with you, if they want to know what's going on, anything that you're doing?
I'm on Facebook. Al Schaefer is my given name. So, if they want to look at Facebook, that's really the only social media I do. I got a young lady who works for me that does all the TikToking and stuff. Although TikTok has become my favorite TV show. I can spend hours watching these little TikToks. They're funny as anything. But I want to say I'm grateful that you had me. I'm grateful that there are still people that are listening and paying attention to professional wrestling. And I want to tell you, you now have my phone number, Stanley. If you need anything, you feel free to reach out and give me a call, okay?
Absolutely. I
All right.
appreciate it.
And I'll be in Nashville next year for a convention. It has to do with, oddly enough, construction, not the wrestling business. But I will look you up, and maybe you, John Arezzi, and I can get together for lunch.
Oh, that would be great. I mean, he'd be another great guest for the show as well.
Well, if you like, I'll ask him and maybe put the two of you in touch.
Yeah.
What
That'd be
about Big
awesome.
Vito LaGrasso?
That'd be another one.
He's a huge friend of mine. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to tell you. He'll tell you. But I'll talk to Vito about you and man, he's doing something really really cool right now, and in phenomenal shape.
Oh yeah.
But if you look up Big Vito LaGrasso on Facebook, you'll see stuff he's doing. You want to talk about the mobster gimmick?
Yes.
Only a little bit more legit with him. So yeah, I'll be happy to reach out to them and see if I can put you in touch. And
Yeah.
Vito, both of John, man, John was in charge. John was president of the Fred Blassie fan club way back when Blassie was still wrestling. That's how far back John Arezzi goes.
Wow.
And super nice man.
Yes.
Well, I don't know bad people, so so if I'm saying I know them, they're good people.
All right. Thanks again
All
for
right.
everything.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And you're more than welcome to come back.
All right. Thank you so much, Stanley. And your
All right.
listeners. God bless everybody.
All right. Take care.
You too.
This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.